The body lay still. It did not move, nor did the wooden box it was trapped in. Minutes passed without a sound until all of a sudden there was a soft roar. Then came the movement. The box was slowly pushed inside of what looked like a very large furnace with a door just big enough to allow the box passage. All of a sudden, the front of the box erupted into flames along with the feet inside. Soon the whole box was gone and the body was alive again, dancing in colored flames. A few hours later, nothing was left but a few pounds of ash and bone fragments. Did that sound more like a horror story or a peaceful and respectful way for the dead body to be disposed of? I personally used to think of cremation, which is what I just described to you, as being revolting, but after doing some research I have already told my loved ones to cremate me. But I'm not here to persuade you one way or the other. Instead, I would like to give you a brief history of cremation. I doubt very many of you can guess when people first started using cremation, but I'll give you one hint. Maybe Guy Cook commercials were right when they said, it's so easy, even a caveman can do it. Many of our prehistoric ancestors used cremation as a way of disposing of the dead. There were many tribes and civilizations that used cremation in the earliest of BC times. According to Caring for the Dead by Lisa Carlson, the earliest tribes to use cremation were Slavic tribes that lived in the Dnieper and Dniester river valleys in Russia, but Babylonians were the first people to ritualize the process. In Encyclopedia for Cremation, authors Douglas Davies and Lewis Mate state that in ancient India, people used funeral pyres for their dead that they called the sacred flame. The Indians were the first people to make urns to keep the ashes in, which they spent a lot of time putting designs on, for that's how they memorialized their dead. In the book History of Cremation by Patsy Santoro, it says that the Greeks started using cremation in 1000 BC on their soldiers who had died in war. They did this because enemies of Greece would dig up their dead warriors and desecrate their bodies. Therefore, the Greeks started to cremate all of their soldiers who had died in battle. The Romans also used the technique of cremation. They practiced cremation from 753 BC until 476 AD. The ashes were put into large urns that were then built into the walls around the city of Rome. Cremation continued to be practiced even after the Greeks and Romans. The Western Hemisphere practiced cremation, but it had its ups and downs in popularity. According to the Katie Myers article, Cremation, the Hot Burial Trend, which was published May 21, 2013 in WordPress, cremation started to decline in Europe after the Greeks and Romans until barbarian tribes started moving west. That, along with the Angles and Saxons who settled in England, led to the rise in popularity of cremation. She then goes on to say that as Christianity started to grow in Europe, it led to the decline of cremation because at that time Christians only burned people as a punishment or during times of plagues and wars. The West may have varied, but some places stuck to and even mandated cremation. According to Corpses, Coffins, and Crypts, written by Penny Coleman, the act of cremation has been continuously used in Japan and India since people first lived there. Hindus and Buddhists must be cremated as part of their religion. It has been that way since both religions started. Recently, the popularity in cremation has grown tremendously. A new method of cremation was introduced not that long ago. The act of cremation as we know it, being incinerated in a large, closed-off chamber, was invented in 1873 by a professor from Italy. After the new method was introduced, cremation societies and doctors led a movement to control disease and improve public health through the widespread use of cremation. Even after the new method of cremation, the number of cremations fluctuated. The public soon started burying the dead again because they felt the risk of disease wasn't there anymore. However, after the large amount of dead bodies caused by the two world wars, cremation started to rise again. In the 1950s and 60s, cremation started to be advertised as a cheaper alternative to burying the dead. Tyler Matheson wrote an article for CNBC on January 22, 2013, called Cremation is the Hottest Trend in the Funeral Industry, in which he stated that in 2011, 42% of the American population chose to be cremated. That is double the rate it was 15 years ago. Katie Myers stated that Canada has a 65% rate of cremation, while England and Wales has a 75% cremation rate as of 2010. But Japan has the highest rate of 99.8% as of 2008. In conclusion, I've shared with you what cremation is, as well as the history of cremation. Our earliest ancestors used cremation, and the trend continued and became a part of Greek and Roman tradition. It was then used by the barbarians, Angles, and Saxons in Europe, only to decline downward until it was only used during plagues and wars. But some places and religions have always used cremations, like Japan and the Hindu religion. As I have shared with you all today, cremation has been used since people have first inhabited the earth. It has recently become more and more popular over the past 100 years, and it will likely continue to gain popularity. Like I said earlier, after researching cremation, it went from a scary taboo to something I decided I would like to happen to my body after I die. I do not want to make you decide one way or another. I just hope I have enlightened you as to what cremation is, who it has been used by throughout the history, and how often it is used now.